So in this video of my AutoLab video series, I'm going to look at deploying the vSphere Management Assistant, or VMA, into the AutoLab environment. The VMA is a virtual appliance. It's not included in the standard AutoLab LabKit build, but it allows you to do kind of remote command line access and scripting to run things against your vSphere environment, either through vCenter or to the host, without having to use a client or any Windows tools. The first thing you have to do is download the vSphere Management Assistant from VMware's website. You will have to log into My VMware to do this. One thing I'll note that on the download link on the website, it actually points to the wrong version. It points to the 5.1 version. So what you'll need to do is, if you use the download link, go back up a level in the navigation and change to 5.5, and then change to the Drivers and Tools tab, and the VMware vSphere Management Assistant is right here. Then we go to Downloads. You'll have to be logged into the to your My VMware portal to be able to download this, but it is free to download. I'll also note that this is the label or title for the download is misnamed also, and it's not named to the right version. But if you look at the read more, it is the VMA 5.5.01, and when you download it, you do get the 5.501 package. Once you've downloaded the package, which I've already done, you extract it. You extract the zip file, which I've also already done, and that gives you the OVA, the OVF, and then the disk for the VMA. So once the OVA has been extracted, then you'll open your workstation up and just open that OVA. Open. You'll have to change this to OVF OVA, and then open the OVF. Now you're going to have to tell it where you want it to store the virtual machine. I'm going to leave it on the default. Right now I'm not going to store this the VMA on the SSD with my host and vCenter server. I'm going to save the space on that SSD to be used for the other parts of the VMA, of the AutoLab environment. The VMA doesn't require a lot of I/O resources. It doesn't require a lot of memory or CPU resources, so it'll run just fine, leaving it on my my regular just spinning disk in my workstation. So I'm going to do import, and that's going to take a few minutes to import. I'm going to pause the video, and once the import's finished, we'll come back and walk through configuring the VMA. The OVF has finished importing into Workstation, and you'll see we have another virtual machine here in our workstation inventory for the VMA. Before we power it on, there's a couple changes we have to make to it to make it work within our AutoLab environment. The first thing we're going to do, we're just edit the settings, and we're going to change the number of the amount of RAM for the virtual machine to 128 meg, which is sufficient to run it in this lab environment. The other thing that we're going to do is connect it to the lab network. The lab network is the VMnet 3, and that's the AutoLab network that the other AutoLab VMs are stored on. So once we've made those changes, we can then just power on the VMA virtual machine. It'll take a minute to boot up. You can hit enter here just to speed the boot up, so you don't have to wait the 5 or 6 seconds or whatever it is for the boot menu. The first time the VMA is booted, it actually runs a wizard to configure both the IP address and the vi-admin user password. So in just a minute here, as it runs through the boot process, it'll start the wizard up and we'll configure those options. So the first boot wizard run has run, and then there's a menu. You can look at the current configuration, and you'll see that there's nothing configured currently. So what we're going to do is first we're going to set the IP address. 6. We're not going to configure IPv6. We are going to configure IPv4. We're not going to use DHCP. We're going to set a static address. There's already an address within the AutoLab environment that's reserved for being used with the VMA, and that's 192.168.199.6. The NAT mask 255.255.255.0. It shows you what you just typed in, asks if you to verify that it's correct. Yes. Now we're going to set the default gateway, which is the gateway for Ethernet 0. That gateway is going to be our router VM, which is 199.2. We're not using IPv6, so no default gateway for that. We're going to set our DNS, which is going to be the IP address of our DC server, 192.168.199.4. We only have one DNS server in the AutoLab environment, so just add it as the same. If you want, you can configure a host name, and I'm just going to set the host name to VMA 55. Once you're finished, you can select 0 just to show your new configurations that you've added, and just verify. If you need to make any changes, then you can enter any of the menu numbers and enter anything if you did make any mistakes. If you're satisfied with it, you can just select 1 to exit this program. Now you're going to have to set the password up for the VI admin user. The old or original password is VMware. The new password, the complexity requirements for the VMA are a little different than some of the complexity requirements for the other pieces of the environment, so you're not able to use the VMware password that you use for that's used throughout the AutoLab environment, unfortunately. So you just have to set a complex password here. Has to have numbers, special character, capital, and lowercase, and it can't be based on a dictionary word. So once you've set the VI admin password and the IP address, the VMA continues through its boot process, which is going to take another minute or two. So I'll be back right after that's done. So once the VMA finishes booting, you're brought to this blue screen on the console, and from here you can select Login and log in as VI admin and use the password that you set when you ran through that first boot wizard. And now we're logged into the VMA. Just a couple things to do. Just test to make sure that you are on the AutoLab network. We'll just ping the DC. And I'm also going to go ahead and just verify that the DNS is working. And it is, so we're using the DC server, and I was able to resolve the name dc.lab.local. So once the VMA is up and configured, you don't have to access it from the console. You can actually also access it using SSH. And logging in as VI-admin. So the VMA has been deployed and it has access to the AutoLab network, and we're able to log into it using PuTTY as VI-admin. So now what? Well, there's a lot of things you can do with the VMA. And I'll leave some of the labs up to you, but we'll just look at a couple of different things here. For one, the VICFG commands, which are the VCLI commands, are available on the VMA. You can use ESXCLI to execute remote ESXCLI commands to your host within your environment. You can also run ESXtop remotely using RESXtop from the VMA to host in your environment. So let's just do that. We'll try that real quick. RESXtop. We'll pass the server that we want to run RESXtop against, which I'm going to use host 1. Hit enter. It's going to ask me for the username that I want to log into host 1 with. We're going to use root, and then the root's password. And there's ESXtop running against host 1, or RESXtop running against host 1. I don't have any VMs running on that host right now, but you can go through the options just as if you were running ESXtop, either through SSH or the command line of the host itself. Again, another thing is the the VCLI commands. So for example, we could do VICFG vSwitch, connect to that server, which is host 1. I'm going to go ahead and pass the username as a command line parameter, and then we're going to run -L just to list the vSwitches available on that host. Oops, typo there, vSwitch. So since I passed the username root, it's just going to ask me to enter a password for root, and once I do that, then it should return me the configurations of the vSwitches on that host. Whoop. If I type in the password correctly. I think I got it right that time. I did. So here's the different vSwitches that are currently set up on host 1. vSwitch 0 and the VMNICs that are uplinks, vSwitch 1 and the VMNICs that are uplinks, and then you can see all the port groups that are assigned to both vSwitch 0 and vSwitch 1. So you can also execute ESXCLI commands to remote host from the VMA. For example, I'll just list the native multipathing plugins that are available on host 1. I passed the username on the command line, so it's going to ask me for the password again. And there's the different PSPs that are available on that first host 1. So there's a whole lot of things that you can do from the VMA, and it's important, especially if you're going to take the VCAP DCA exam, that you get kind of familiar with using the command line on the VMA while you're working in your AutoLab environment. It's a lot of things you can do a lot faster, especially if you really learn the command structures. And there are a few things, especially when you're dealing with some of the storage and multipathing, that can only be done through the CLI, and it's easier to use the CLI through the VMA, where you can connect to multiple hosts instead of having to log in to each host individually. You log into the VMA once, and then you're able to connect to these other hosts and pass commands onto them. It makes it much easier and much quicker for doing a lot of things that may only be able to be done by the command line. So in this video, we looked at downloading the VMA from VMware. We looked at deploying it into the AutoLab environment and making the configuration changes so that it'll work, setting up the IP address, setting up the VI admin password, connecting to the VMA remotely using PuTTY, and then running a few commands on the VMA. Hopefully you found this video useful. If you did, please leave me a comment either on YouTube or on my website at www.vhersey.com, Or you can also hit me up at Twitter. My Twitter username is @HerseyC. Look forward to the next video, hopefully in a week or so. I haven't really decided on what the next one is going to be, but we'll probably actually start looking at doing some labs within the AutoLab environment. So hope to see you soon. Hope you enjoyed these videos. Thank you.